Welcome back, folks. Joining us in studio is Jan Peery with the YWCA. Jan, thank you so much for being here and taking time with us.
Appreciate you having me.
So you heard us, we were talking about what's coming out of professional sports and domestic violence issues. Let me ask you, just for starters, because you've been working this so long, what do you think of how the NFL has been handling this?
Well, you know, some want to say it's too little too late, but it's never too late. I think a lot of it is very typical of how our nation as a whole and many fields have addressed domestic violence. We've tried to sweep it under the carpet and ignore it. You know, our communities were outraged when they saw the video of her being punched in the elevator. But my question is, why weren't we just as outraged when we saw her drug out like a piece of garbage in the initial part of that? So the good thing about it is, yes, it's created a lot of stir, and the dialogue is helping to create the stir. It's given a lot of voice to victims.
Do you think that maybe the aggressiveness of the media and society or the sport itself contributes to this, or do you think that's not a factor?
No, I don't necessarily think so. You know, domestic violence is about power and control. So any element, any field, career, whatever, that would draw someone who is looking for that sense of power and control, and yes, that could be in sports, it can be military, it can be in police. It doesn't mean those fields create it, but it means they may be a draw to some of those people that do, and feed it if it's not contained.
Let's bring this issue home for our viewers. What are the numbers? What's it like in our state? How big of an issue is this for us to deal with in Oklahoma?
Oklahoma, we have you mentioned 1 in 4 women. That is accurate. We are currently 3rd in the nation for women killed by men in a single offender, single incident, which is the closest thing we have to domestic violence. 3rd in the nation. This is the 2nd year in a row that we've been there. We're not in a good place. For many years we didn't have enough laws. It was considered a misdemeanor if you broke your wife's arm, but a felony if you kicked your dog. You know, so we've made some changes and improved that, but the laws have to follow. The courts have to get more strict on it, just like NFL is beginning to, you know, put some restrictions in there for those that are doing that. Our courts have to respond appropriately as well. And then as a society, we have to make it safe for a victim to report and to get out.
How much of this is kind of perpetuating itself, that we find out that those that are in domestic abuse cases actually had domestic abuse in their background as well?
There's a high percentage that it is cyclical. I think the statistics show something like 7 out of 10 will repeat the cycle, either becoming an abuser or marrying an abuser. So it is. But you know, we also want to think it happens in low income, low education, specific ethnic groups. It is across the board. It's very high profile. It happens in all of our communities and all of our businesses.
So here on the Middle Ground, we like to talk about solutions and what's happening at home, and you're clearly a part of that. So why don't you tell us about the YWCA and the mission of the organization and how you all are helping?
Well, our core services are all focused on victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, and helping them to find those services that they need to get out, to heal, to have resources to move on to a life without violence. So we have emergency shelter, transitional housing, we have groups, peer groups, we have licensed counseling. I always tell everybody the licensed counselors are like the heart surgeons. If you needed heart surgery, you go to a heart surgeon, not a general practitioner. Our counselors are trained specifically in the safety and the dynamics of domestic violence. We do prevention education in the schools, trying to reach those kids at a young age to help them identify what are red flags, how do you know a relationship is not good, it's not healthy. And really pretty well wrap around with sexual assault. We do forensic exams to make sure that those exams are done in a way that doesn't re-traumatize a victim, that the courts, the judicial system has good evidence to be able to use in a case if needed for a sexual assault.
So you've been working on this issue for a while, helping men, women, children. What led you to the service? How did you get involved?
Well, you know, ironically, I was just recruited to come help for a short time, only a total of a few hours. It would have been over a month's time. But in doing so, I began to write some grants. And the more I learned about it and learned how much this impacts our community at large, from, you know, not just the domestic violence victim looking at that trauma and the quality of life, but it impacts teen pregnancy, drug and alcohol use, dating violence, child abuse. The children in these homes are abused at least 65% of the time. And when there's a death from child abuse, there's a pattern of abuse against the mother at least 70. So, you know, I'm one of these people that when I see something that needs to be fixed, I want to fix it. And the more I've become involved, the more I realize this is something that our community needs to embrace actually across the board. We need to quit pulling people out of the river and go upriver and find out what's causing them to fall in. And domestic violence is that underlying systemic cause in so much of that.
I was one of the several hundred, maybe 1,000 that were at the men's breakfast this year. I thought it was a fantastic event you all put on. And really one of the things I took away that was surprising is for our first responders, public safety personnel, just how much danger they're in because of this issue and how many incidents happen every year around domestic abuse. That's one of the hardest calls for them to respond. How close do you all work with the Oklahoma City Police Department and Sheriff's Department and everything on these issues?
We have a strong partnership with OCPD and the surrounding metro area law enforcement. We actually have a staff person at Oklahoma City Police Department that'll work with victims to help them, and we help them go to court if they need to. Not legal assistance, but somebody, an advocate, to be there with them.
Sure.
Oklahoma City Police Department Chief City has said what we do is the same that they do in the sense that we're providing a public safety. There's a national gentleman who is an expert in violence and has said domestic violence shelters are the closest thing our country has to homicide prevention. And that is what we do. We get them in, we get them safe. And so that partnership with law enforcement is critical for our safety as well as theirs and the victims especially.
Well, Jan, thank you so much for being here, and thanks
you
for all
very
that you
much.
do.
Thank you.
Folks, to learn more about domestic violence services provided by the YWCA, you can find that information on their website, and we've made it easy for you to find by linking to it on our Facebook page. Just go to facebook.com/MiddleGround TV. Still ahead, well, what's the solution? Our next guest is here to share how Oklahoma can break the cycle.